Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Rich Herrera. Thanks for joining us here on the Bret Boone Podcast. I'm the executive producer of the program and a host nationally on the Infinity Sports Network. And I've got a pleasure for you today. So much has been said, so much has been made about the gambling allegations in the National Basketball Association. And there's one man that I thought of that we had to have come on the program. He's been on the program before. He has led a colorful life. He is the real deal. Michael Franzese is joining us right now. Out of respect, how would I best describe you to our listeners that might not be familiar with your name, but they've seen your face on Fox News? You were on with my friend Brian Kilmeade the other day. You've been on everywhere. Everybody wants to talk to you about this story that just broke last week.
Well, they always introduce me as a former, captain in the Colombo crime family and a life that's been transformed over the last 30 years. So I guess that's the way to describe it. And yeah, Thursday morning I woke up to this firestorm of media requests over the whole NBA gambling scandal. So it's been an interesting couple of days. I can say that.
Absolutely. He's got one of the best podcasts on YouTube, creates so much content. I actually subscribe to your channel and watch just about everything you put out. It's absolutely fascinating to look through the world through your eyes and all that you've seen from your past and where you are today and how you've turned your life around. And that's where you first met Bret Boone. When we had you on the podcast last time, I know a lot of the folks that work in Major League Baseball, being a former broadcaster, and they would warn us, not so much as they did with Bret and the players, but they'd warn us, be careful who wants to get their hooks into you. Be careful who wants to be your friend. So let's start. Just a reminder, if people might not have seen the first episode we had you on, you actually met Bret Boone at spring training while Major League Baseball recruited you to come out and talk to the players about be careful who you associate with.
Yeah, they actually recruited me out of prison. I was finishing up a 10-year prison sentence. I had about 6 months to go. And the FBI came first and said, look, we need a favor from you. And I didn't want to do any favors from the FBI at that point. But then they brought in the NBA, Major League Baseball, and they knew I had a big gambling operation on the street. When I say I had bookmakers working with me, and we had a lot of athletes gambling with us. So they said, Mike, you claim you turned your life around. We need you to really come and help us with this issue that we have with gambling in sports. So that was I got out of prison, and we created a video with respect to that. And I told them exactly how we set up the athletes and how we put them in trouble. And then when I got out of prison, they asked me to take it a step further and come in and visit all of these athletes, NBA, Major League Baseball, and NFL. So I met all the players. We did that in spring training in 96, 97, 98. I've been really doing it ever since. And then the NCAA jumped on board in 98. And since then, I visited probably 300 Division I and II universities over the years, the latest being a couple this year that I did. So it's been a good program. I tell these young people and I tell the pro players just the way it is, how they're going to get caught up and why it's such a dangerous cycle and how it could really hurt not only their careers, but their lives personally.
Were you surprised when the story broke of the crooked card games and the performance shaving?
Not at all. You need to understand. I know a lot of people think that, organized crime, the mafia, that it's dead. It's really not dead. I mean, they just got smart and went undercover because they realized after the RICO, statute did so much damage, and guys like John Gotti, who was so out there, caused so much trouble for themselves and for others, they knew they had to quiet down. And, I'll tell you this, why it wasn't surprising to me, in my old associates, La Cosa Nostra organized crime, back in the days of Prohibition, we had a good run. We had an 11-year run. And I always say it was the government that made the mafia strong in this country. During Prohibition, we took advantage of it. But that was an 11-year run. I was in the gas business, defrauding the government out of tax on every gallon of gasoline. It was a good run. We had about 7 or 8 years. And then it ended. Gambling has been the mainstay for Cosa Nostra ever since these immigrants came into this country and started up. It'll always be major business. They love it. They know how to do it well. And they're constantly looking for, ways to capitalize, especially in sports, both, college and pros, obviously. As far as the card games are concerned, hey, it's a natural. These guys, they play cards, they do it better than anybody else. Let's put it that way.
Okay, let's talk about how this can happen. So as a young man, I'm working in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm looking for a place to live. And there was a place that I would go. It had a great pizza place next to it, and it was a nice bar up in North Beach. And somebody goes, "Oh, you need a place to live? Hey, come back tomorrow. I'll help you find a place to live." And I go, "Oh, great." I told my uncle. My uncle goes, "No, no, 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 no. You don't want to take any favors for anybody over there." He says, "Do not let anybody get their hooks into you." He goes, "You're around the team. They're going to want to know if there's anything going on. They're going to pump you information." He goes, "Just go back politely, tell them, no, thank you. I found another place, and don't go back in there again." He warned me about people trying to get hooks into you. So can you break down how someone from organized crime can get near an athlete, get near a player, get their hooks into somebody? Because sometimes it starts just very innocently as you think it's a friendship, but they have ulterior motives.
Oh, it's absolutely true. I mean, sometimes people think athletes play their sport and then go home and go to sleep. They don't go out to clubs. They don't go out to restaurants. They don't go out and meet people. A lot of times we hung out in the same places many of the athletes did in New York. And we got friendly with them. We buy them a drink. We talk about their team. We get close to them. Before you know it, and what I've said, and I think you know this, a lot of these guys, they gamble heavy. They gamble heavy and they get themselves in trouble. And, a lot of questions, which we'll probably get into about Chauncey Billups and, how a guy making $26 million can get into a trap like that. It's not difficult. It really isn't. So we rub shoulders with a lot of these guys. And quite often, if we were in a club, they would want to meet us. There's a little celebrity status to guys in organized crime, too, depending upon how they carry themselves. There are a lot of them are in the media. A lot of guys wanted to meet John Gotti. A lot of guys wanted to meet my father and even myself during that time. So, you get to rub shoulders with these guys. Before you know it, there's a friendship, and then the conversations start to turn in a different direction. This is what we did. This is what we were good at.
Let's get to how Chauncey Billups could fall prey for this, or any of the other players, because we have two players in Major League Baseball that were suspended this year. We have an umpire that was suspended this year. Somebody's going to get their hooks into you if you're not paying attention. If you're naive the way I was. Luckily, I had an uncle that was a little bit more streetwise than I was, who steered me in a different direction. But I keep seeing everybody, and they ask you the same question. "Oh, these guys are getting into this because they're competitive. They're competitive." And I'm like, that's not it. I've been around professional athletes for 30 years. I got a couple of reasons. I want to ask you why you think somebody would fall in to be involved in this. Number one, professional athletes like that adrenaline rush. It's not so much the competitiveness, it's that adrenaline rush of having a little action on the game. A little action turns into big action because they're adrenaline junkies, not because they're competitive. They're competitive on the field. They're just adrenaline junkies. Number two is once they get there and they fall behind, how do you tell your accountant? How do you tell your wife? How do you tell the team that you've fallen so far behind and now I'm into you? And if I'm paying, if I'm paying every week and I'm falling further and further behind, there's no way to get out of it unless you start to compromise yourself. And then the other one, I've seen a lot of professional athletes that have entourages, and those entourages could be a way for someone to get their hooks into you. And maybe sometimes somebody who's playing say, "Hey, listen, you know what? I'm not going to play the full game tonight." He tells his entourage, they go out and make these bets, and it's a way for them to take care of their entourage because those guys that are hangers on are always sticking their hands in the athlete's pocket. What do you think?
Oh, you're right on all three counts on that. And I'll tell you, the third one, I can't tell you how many times I sat around when I was in prison and we were in the rec room watching television. We were watching a game. And one of these guys from the neighborhood would say, "Oh, he's my homeboy. He's my friend. He's my buddy. Wait till I get out. I'm going to make money with him." So, and that becomes part of the entourage. And I used to tell them, "Hey, if that's your friend, if that's your buddy, why do you want to hurt him? Let him have his career. You don't want to come in there. Well, he owes me. You don't understand." And I said, "No, I understand, but he's your friend. He's doing well. Why would you want to do that?" But you're so right about that. Their entourages, a lot of times, guys are looking to help them out. And how important those injury reports are in a game. How important, one player, especially in the NBA, can really affect the outcome of the game, the point spread by putting himself on the bench for a few extra minutes, or taking himself out, or an injury. And I believe that that's done quite a bit. I really mean that. And, it's sad. I get it. Sometimes you want to support your friends, but hey, this is a pro competition, and that's definitely against the rules. You're not supposed to be doing it, but it does happen. You're right on all three counts.
When you're in that life A friend of mine told me this. He goes, no matter what you do, whatever your weakness is, we're going to find it. It's either women, it's sex, it's drugs, it's booze, it's gambling. We all have a vice. We're going to find out what that vice is, and we're going to use it to get to you. Talk to me
No
about
question. I'm sure you heard the name Norby Walters. Do you know who Norby was? Okay. Well, he was a big agent, originally a talent agent for most of the black entertainers. He did a great job. And then he shifts over to sports and representing college athletes for their pro careers. Well, Norby was around my father since I'm born. He was a close associate of ours. When my father went to prison, then I took it over. And when he started this agency, I gave him $250,000. He was with a guy by the name of Lloyd Bloom, who was a college athlete, and also they got together. And my sole purpose for getting involved with him was to get close to these athletes. Hey, I'm going to get close to athletes that are entering their pro career. You're going to have parties. I'm going to be around. You're going to invite me. I'm your partner. We'll get to meet these guys. And as many of these guys as we can get our hooks into, we're going to do. And, I told him, we like the way you play. We like everything about you. But you know what? We're here to make money. At the end of the day, we don't care about you, your team, or anything else. We're here to make money. And that's what drives people in organized crime. And gambling, anytime you can get an edge by having a player that your hooks into a player, you're going to take it.
Michael, are you any different than the shoe agents that try to get them to play for this AAU team or that AAU team so eventually they'll sign with one of those big shoe companies? I'm just trying to get close to you so I can make money off a kid one day.
Absolutely. I mean, our tactics and techniques might be a little bit different than the shoe agencies. I hope so. I hope they're a little bit more above board than we were with respect to that. But yeah, I mean, look, I used to tell these guys, you're a commodity. You don't let anybody make a sucker out of you. If somebody's trying to give you something, if somebody's being overly nice to you, you got to look at the reasons behind it. What are they looking for? What's their interest? Why are they doing this? You just have to have your guard up at all times. And I preach that to them. And, hopefully we made sense to a lot of them. I was really happy when Kurt Schilling, I was on a show with him the other night.
You were on with my friend Brian Kilmeade.
Yeah, with Brian. And Kurt came out and said, Michael, I don't know if you remember this, but you were in our clubhouse and you told this and you really opened my eyes and helped me out in a situation that I was facing. So I think we had some good impact on the players because, when you've been there and done that, they respect you and they listen to what you have to say. And hopefully it helped a lot of players out.
Well, okay, so let's also dispel one of these rumors because I've been hearing all of this on sports talk radio, and I've been a sports talk show host for 30 years. Seeing this on TV, they're going, oh, well, you know what? They're getting their hooks into players that grew up poor, or they're getting their hooks into players that come from different socioeconomic backgrounds. I've known people that have been degenerate gamblers. I'll try to use a kind word, but they gamble all the time, and it doesn't matter whether you grew up with two kids in Beverly Hills or you grew up with no parents and the worst hood. It's not just something that goes for one group of people. I mean, it could be anybody that could fall into this trap.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no racial bias at all. Whoever we think we can get close to, we're getting close to. We don't point somebody out because of where they came from. Not at all.
So it could be any. I mean, you could find somebody who went to Harvard, who went to one of the biggest colleges, and is a highly educated genius. You could find somebody who barely got through college. You get your hooks into them. They all can fall prey to that. If I know what your vice is.
Absolutely, and if it's gambling, it doesn't matter. There's no racial bias there. If you're a gambler, we're coming after you. That's it.
So, give me the game plan for those watching. Because again, you're professional athletes, that's a bonus. But if you fall prey to somebody, it doesn't matter whether you're a stockbroker, a guy who owns a car dealership. I get my hooks into you. How do you get close to the athletes? What is the motive, the modus operandi? How do you spot the ones that you think you can get into?
Well, again, for me back in the day, it was easy because athletes were gambling with our bookmakers. So we knew, we knew who they were right away. And, I've told this scenario a couple of times. You get an athlete that's into you, a bookmaker would come to me, hey, this guy owes us 50 grand, 60 grand, 70 grand, should I cut him off? And I said, why would you cut him off? Let him get into you for 250, 300, 400,000. All you're doing is putting an entry on a piece of paper. It's not costing you anything. And then at that point in time, bring him to me, because now we got him. Tell him straight out, hey, you're going to pay this debt. How are you going to do it? You got a rich uncle, grandfather, whatever, go rob a bank. I don't care. You're going to pay us off. And they're scared. They know who we are. And then this happened many times. I say, listen, I like you. I like the team. I'm not going to, burden you at this moment. But here's what you're going to do. You're going to pay 2% of the debt in cash every week. That's it. Until you pay it off, and, just keep going. Don't worry about it. Play your game. Well, what does that guy do? Inevitably, he's got to make this up. So he goes to another bookmaker in a different part of town. And we all have a network. We know who's who and what's what, right? And eventually, now the guy's in for $1 million. He's really heavy. And that's when you sit him down and say, listen, you don't have this money. Here's what you're going to do. And I've said this a couple of times. You're a quarterback. If we have somebody, first 3 times you get the ball, you put it in the hands of the other team. Running back, same thing. I want 3 fumbles. That's it. I'll do the rest. Wide receiver, you make sure you tip that into the hand of the defender. And over a series of games, again, because it's never about winning or losing. It's all about the point spread. This is how you start to compromise the outcome of the game so you can get this thing going. And it's unfortunately it's done. It really is. And I have some people calling me, Michael, can we trust any game that we watch? I said, of course you could. This is not in every game. I'm not trying to sour the sport or dampen the sport. These guys are competitive, and most of them are doing the right thing. But obviously, this stuff happens. And unfortunately, you don't know where or when it's going to happen. So you could be a bettor and be victimized by this unknowingly.
So people will say, and I've heard it again this week, well, wait a minute. These guys are millionaires. What did they, can't they just pay off these things? Tell me how you get someone who makes more money than the average person does in a lifetime, how you get them compromised when they make that much cash.
Well, I've seen it. You got a player that's making $25-30 million a year, and he's a gambler. Well, he's not satisfied gambling $500, $1,000, or 10 grand. He gambles big too. And when you gamble big, you lose big. And all of a sudden you look up, hey, I lost 2, 3, 4, 5 million. How am I going to make it back? Well, I can't make it back on the field. I have to make it back another way. So now they're close with us. Hey, I got a way to do it. You like to play cards? We have a couple of fish out there, they love to be sitting down with you. And here's the deal. We got this thing rigged. We got it handled. We'll split the profit with you 50-50. Oh, okay, great. Now I'm making up some of my gambling losses because I have an edge. This stuff really happens. It really happens. So it doesn't matter how much money. People said to me, Michael, do you know about Michael Jordan? And I know a little about Michael Jordan, but I got to tell you, I was wrong about him. And I'm going to tell you why. I said, Michael gambles on everything. I know that for a fact, working with the NBA. I know a lot of stuff there. I said, he gambles on everything. Guy, I don't want to call him a degenerate because I have respect for Michael, but he gambles on everything. And I said, hey, that's who he is. But then I saw the documentary on him, and somebody asked him, you have a gambling problem, Michael? And he said, no, I don't. I have a competition problem. He says, I just like to raise the stakes on everything. And you know what? He's right, because Michael's got enough of a revenue stream where his gambling is never going to impact his life. He's still going to pay his mortgage. He's still going to go on vacation, have his cars, and enjoy himself because he can cover those losses. But not everybody can. There's not every Michael Jordan out there. So this is how these guys making millions still get in trouble because they're losing millions.
Someone like Chauncey Billups, who was involved in this game, so I'm just assuming, and again, he's innocent until proven guilty. Once you get into that, where now you're going to be part of this crooked game to pay off whatever I'm into you for. Will I ever pay it off, or am I always going to be under your thumb?
Well, you're going to be under our thumb until something like this happens, and now there's an investigation, and everybody's exposed, But now you got other consequences you have to worry about. But yeah, if not for that, because listen, hey, you're going to work with me. You want people to know what you're doing? Come on. I mean, I can let this out. I mean, you do use that, leverage that you have over an athlete. Listen, you're going to work with me until I tell you you're done. Otherwise, people are going to know what you're doing. I don't care. This is my life. I'll go to jail. I'll bail out and I'll fight the case. That's what I do. But you have a career. I don't have a career. So, and they realize that. And that is something that's used. It's extortion in a way. But hey, this is the street. We don't worry about that. That's our method. That's our technique. That's how we operate.
I know every NFL team. I know in the NBA, particularly when I worked in the league, there are a couple former FBI agents that were stationed in every city that in around the country, and they'd keep an eye on where the players were, what they were doing, who they were associating with, and if they're in the wrong place, they'll notify security. And I know the NBA tries to keep an eye on that. Who works to keep these players from working against their own best interest and falling in with the wrong crowd?
Well, you have the head of security on all the leagues that's supposed to, put this veil of protection around the players, but it's difficult. I mean, they're not 24/7 under surveillance from the leagues and their security departments. So it's very hard to keep track of them. It really is. And look, in this investigation, from what we're hearing so far, there is somebody, whether it be an undercover agent that was planted there or an informant that started to work with the government that has allegedly 3,000 tape recorded conversations and text messages among the players and among the participants in this scheme. So who knows what else is going to come out about this? Who knows what other people are involved? You remember that whole Tim Donaghy scam, right? When Tim Donaghy, the referee from the NBA, got in trouble. You know how that happened? It was the FBI surveilling organized crime in New York. And this guy, Tim Donaghy's name was mentioned in an unrelated investigation. And that's how they got to this guy. So the more people that you have involved in something, the more chances there are of you getting caught, because people talk, people make mistakes, people are careless. The FBI, they're listening, they have investigations, could be an unrelated investigation. But once you get into that swamp and you're playing in that cesspool, you're opening yourself up for a problem. No doubt.
Are you gonna run afoul of the law eventually, whether it's somebody who's in the life or someone who's caught up in this as an athlete or someone around sports? Are you gonna eventually get caught one day?
No question. I tell I said, listen, I'm going to give you some street advice. After a lot of experience, I've been indicted 7 times, trial 5 times. I've had undercover investigations on me and Don King and all that. I said, if you want your best chances of surviving in criminal activity, do it alone. That's it. Don't involve anybody else. And if you can't do it alone, don't do it. Period. End of story. Because the more people are involved, it could be your best friend. It's really different when those, law enforcement comes up to you and say, hey, you're going to help us out, or you're going to jail for 20 years. Your career is going to be ruined. We're going to put a RICO statute on you. We're going to take every penny that you got. We're going to destroy your life. People turn. They don't stand up like you think, no matter who it is. It's self-survival at that point.
Is there one sport that's more susceptible than others? I've worked in the NFL. I've worked in Major League Baseball. I worked in the NBA. I covered boxing a lot. And boxing, boy, there's so many shady people that I see walk in and out. I've been around MMA. Is there one that you would look to, if you wanted to rank them, which is the easiest or the toughest to break into for someone in the life?
Well, you talk about boxing. If you get one boxer, I mean, you don't have to have a whole team. You get one guy working with you that's going to take a fall to somebody. Well, that's a score. That's a home run for as long as it lasts. You could make all your money on one bout, even if it's questionable that the guy took a dive. So, and unfortunately, I think, that organized crime, we had a lot to say with pro boxing many, many years ago. Not the same now, but many, many years ago. But for me, the easiest sport to really get to is in the NBA, basketball. You got 5 players on the court. You got a referee, really easy. People don't realize this too. You got a referee, right? It's Christmas time. He needs a few extra bucks. God forbid one of his kids needs an operation or something. So what does he do? An NBA ref can call a foul just about every time they move down the court, or he can miss a foul if he wants to miss. So, you got the team is favored to win by 10 points. So what does he do? He takes their main player and he puts him on the bench, for a couple extra minutes. Give him an extra foul or 2. What happens then? You bet the under. They don't cover the spread, because remember, it's never about winning or losing. Now, if that referee is smart over the course of a season and he's got one guy that he can trust placing these bets that's unrelated to him, you don't ever want to be the guy placing the bet, because then you're taking a risk with whoever you're placing the bet with. But if you have one guy, your brother, your cousin, somebody will die for you, and he's making those bets, on your behalf, you can make a lot of money, and nobody will ever know.
How do I hide the money if I'm an NBA player referee, where it's not going to come across my bank accounts, which the feds will look at?
Well, there's ways to do that.
Crypto.
Well, listen, I'm not really well versed on crypto. I
Okay.
still I still don't trust it. I'm very, I watch things like this. Whenever I know there's a possibility of government control, I don't like it.
Right.
I'm not all in on crypto yet. And you know how many people have asked me to promote their crypto, and I just don't want to do it, but there's ways to, that's a whole nother, segment.
Yeah, that's a whole, the next time we get you back on, prop bets versus point spreads versus wins and losses. The average person might not understand any of that. I worked in Las Vegas at one of the sports talks radio networks out there. So I did a lot talk about prop bets and point spreads and wins and losses. How do those affect how you can make money betting without alerting everybody in the world that something funky is going on?
Well, with us, it was very easy. To me, it was all about the spread. We used to, get a kid, a college kid in the NBA that's playing basketball. And I can't tell you how many times scenarios like this go on, not only with me, I was involved in a few, but others. Again, we were in New York. A lot of these kids hang out in clubs. They go out afterwards. And remember in New York, we had a very big network. There was 750 made guys that comprised all 5 families, right? Well, we had friends, we had neighbors, we had relatives. Their kids were playing in school, in college. We got to meet a lot of guys. You get a kid that's a college player, is pretty good. He's a senior. You sit him down, you watch him. You get close to him a little bit, and you tell him, hey, you're a pretty good player, but you're 6'2". You're not going to the pros. You know that? Yeah, I know. Hey, what's going on with you, man? I hear your mother's in bad shape. She's driving around in an old jalopy. Your girlfriend is pregnant. How much money you got in your pocket? Oh, I'm broke. Why are you broke? Every time you play, that school fills 16,000 people going to the arena. Why are you broke? You shouldn't be broke. They're making money on you. Let me tell you what you're going to do. You got 10 games left, Here's what I want you to do. Wednesday night, you're playing. You're favored to win by 10 points. Don't win by 10, win by 7, win by 6. Don't lose the game. We want you to win. We love your team. Don't lose the game. Just don't cover the spread. Here's the deal. And this is the magic number. I pulled 10 grand out of my pocket, put it on the table, push it over to him. Very, very hard to refuse. Very hard. But here's what happens. Inevitably, that as covering sports all the time, it's harder for somebody to underperform than it is to do his best, because now emotionally, psychologically, who's watching me? Is my coach going to see? My teammates? I'm letting them down. Are the fans going to notice? So after 2, 3, 4 games, that young player will come back and say, hey, I can't do this anymore. It's really getting into my head. I just can't do it. I got 30 grand. It's more money than I need. Please let me go. And my response is, what do you mean let me go? You made a deal. You shook my hand. You took my money. No, you got 7 more games to go. Unless you want to go talk to your coach, tell them how good you've been playing. Want to tell your girlfriend, your mother, they'll be proud of you. How about we go to the police? I don't care. I'll bail out the next day. No, you're done when when I tell you you're done, that's when you're done. It's tactics like these that are used that guys on the street are very good at. They know how to take advantage, especially of young players. That's why college now is so susceptible. I think the NCAA made a huge mistake by allowing last week it came down, now that these college athletes are allowed to gamble on pro sports. They weren't allowed to do that before because they want to make equal to their peers on the campuses. Well, they're not equal. These kids are making good money now, under the new rules. They got scholarships, most of them. They're not equal. They're above, and they have to be guarded better. But the more access you give to something that's harmful to you, and gambling could very well be, if you can't control yourself, the more access, the more you're opening yourself up for a problem. And I've been saying that for 30 years. Obviously, they're not listening because the allure of the dollars, even with all the pro leagues, that. They're partnership now with all these gambling. What do you expect? You're going to have these kind of situations. If the government, if the FBI has a special division, if they put a special division to watch gambling issues in pro sports, forget it. You're going to see these things happening all the time.
NIL. Now these kids are making money in college, but not all of them. Right. So we had Charles Barkley on, and he talked about, soon you're going to get players that are going to get jealous. The quarterback's making all this money. This guy's not making that much money. just pumping that much money into college sports would make me believe that kids would be more susceptible, that if I'm not making as much NAL as the other guy, well, maybe I'm going to come talk to somebody who lives that life and try to get some money.
No doubt about it. Absolutely. It's going to happen, especially a player that's not going to make it into the pros. He's going to start doing something. There's a lot of money in college sports. You know, I recently did a couple of schools this year. Some of these kids are making more money than the coaches now. They've talked to me about it. They're not happy about it. They're not happy about it. I'm telling you right now, it's going to cause problems because you just created the scenario. Hey, this guy's making all this money. I'm not making all. I don't know if I'm going to the pros. And believe me, guys on the street know that. Bookmakers know that. Gamblers know that. You know, that's a weakness that these kids, many of them, are going to have, and people are going to take advantage of it.
I've watched all your podcasts. I've seen all the interviews. You were talking with Brian Kilmeade and some other people that I know. When I first started in sports radio, and again, everybody knows we have that big picture of the Major League Baseball clubhouses. You will not gamble. It is the cardinal sin. Once you break that, you're kicked out of the game. You're not allowed back. We will not allow that. When I worked at those Vegas casinos, so I worked out of the MGM Grand, and I worked out of, the places where all those sports radio stations are.
Sure.
We really wouldn't talk about gambling the way we do now. And for me, it's been a little unusual because we've kind of whitewashed. We've gotten rid of that stigma of gambling. So, now I'm watching games. They're talking about point spreads. They're talking about this. I knew this was going to happen as soon as Adam Silver came out and said, it'll draw interest to the game. This will be great that we're going to team up with all of these gaming sites and these apps. Now, full disclosure, I did endorsements for the Win app. Part of when they came aboard and they said it's legal and they said, hey, these are our sponsors, and I did commercials for them, and I used the app. So I'm not, throwing rocks. I did use the app. I wasn't working in professional sports anymore, and I didn't bet on anything that I was covering, but it was part of the deal for the endorsement for the radio station. So I did do those spots, but I just thought to myself, man, you are just bringing the fox to the hen house of the fact that Adam Silver of the NBA pushed so hard for this. And I was begging on the radio, guys, don't do this. Don't do this. Second you do this and you get that close, you're just going to normalize this, and it's going to cost everybody dearly somewhere down the line.
Absolutely. And I'll give you another situation. If you remember, off-track betting, was legal in New York when they had the, all those storefronts. And I'll never forget, some guys from the NYPD came over and they said, we're going to put you guys out of business now. I said, yeah, let's wait and see. So what happens? People that never gambled with a bookmaker before, never really gambled. Oh man, I can go to the track and I can I don't have to go to the track, but I can gamble legally now outside of the track. So what do? They go to off-track betting, and what happens there? You got to put your credit card down. You got to pay cash. They don't give you credit. So now people that only gambled when they went to the track now are gambling every day because they have access to it, right? On their way to work, on their way home. What happens then? When they lose, inevitably, at OTB, they come back to the bookmaker. Now they're looking for bookmakers because we gave them credit, and they're trying to make up their losses. A gambler is always trying to catch up and make up their losses. So what did they do? They increased our business. And then eventually off-track betting went bankrupt. They couldn't even manage it properly. They should have asked us to manage it. We would have did a better job. But, again, it's access. The more access you have to a vice, the more trouble it's going to cause. And especially now, you're right, they normalized it. It's legalized. It's no big deal. But they don't realize, I can tell you this, brother, and I really mean it. I've seen more people ruin their lives over gambling than I have with drugs or alcohol, because I was in the business of it. It's an addictive deal. There's no question about it.
Kids betting with these apps, and I see this on the college campuses right now. Oh, I'm going to download this app. I'm going to download this app. I'm going to see who's going to entice me with this, who's going to entice me with that. And then what I see is kids will get a credit card. They'll use it to fund one app, and then they'll get another credit card to fund this app. Before you know it, they're using this one to catch up with this one. And then all of a sudden, they're not able to catch up on any of them. And who knows what happens to them next? They're probably going to find a kid on campus that's a bookmaker.
Exactly. And there's a lot of kids on campus that are being a bookmaker, and a lot of them are set up by guys that are in the street. No question. I mean, I experienced a lot of that. When I was really into it and I was doing research just across the country, you can't even believe how many instances I found of kids getting in trouble with college bookmakers, campus bookmakers, some of them robbing banks, to make up debts. And rob a bank to make up a $3,000 debt. I mean, that's just pitiful. A young man would do something like that over $3,000. Go and rob a bank. There was one kid I remember. He was a pastor's son, and went and robbed the bank. And by the time he got back to his campus, he got caught because he wasn't sophisticated. But he did it over $3,000 that he owed. I mean, this is terrible what they're allowing, these young people what they're opening up for them, a situation where they can really hurt themselves, really.
You talked about, and what you talked about was Schilling the other day, and you did this for Bret when he was a player. So if we have a dad listening right now and he has a kid that's an athlete, what advice would you give a parent to tell their kid to stay away?
Well, number one, pay attention, and they got to open their eyes up to what the damage that it could do for them. The fact that it's legal doesn't mean that it's good, and doesn't mean that it's moral. And whenever you're involved in any kind of vice like that could become addictive, again, it depends on your personality, it depends on your makeup, but it's very possible that an addiction can rise out of this. You have to warn them in the strongest terms possible that they cannot get involved, because number one, they're going to meet shady characters that are going to try to take advantage of them. And this could be something that could really, ruin not only their college career or whatever, but can really ruin their lives. I've seen young people get destroyed over this. And you know what? They can't stop. That's the thing. They can't stop. You said it. It's an adrenaline rush for some, it really is. And, I'll tell you what happened to me. I got blessed. My father used to tell me, wine, women, and gambling. Be careful, right? So one day I didn't listen to him. I was young. I had a Lincoln Continental. So I went to the track with a couple of guys, right? He didn't want me to go to track ever. He would warn me because my dad knew, he was in the gambling business, but he didn't want his family involved. So I go to the track. I'm not kidding, bro. I lost 7 out of 9 races, right? And then I came out into the parking lot, and somebody back then we had hubcaps, stole all the hubcaps off my car. I said, this is a sign. I ain't never going back. That was it. And it really hit me hard. I said, man, my dad, because I didn't want to tell him. I wouldn't have told him I was at the track, but I didn't tell him till years later. But man, you got to tell your young people in the strongest terms, stay away from it. And you got to monitor them. You got to watch them. You got to watch what they're doing, because this could be very, very devastating.
All right, big question. I don't think anybody's ever asked you this, but let me ask you this. You've done all these interviews. Is there something that you wish someone would have asked you? Is there something that we're missing when we talk about this in the NBA and professional sports? Because again, you had everybody who knows a lot about sports to people that know nothing about sports that have been inviting you on. Is there something that we're missing that nobody's brought up yet?
No, I think you've covered it all today. I really do. And, I've been asked so often about this, and obviously I've spoken so much about it. I think you hit the nail on the head in everything. People have to be aware that this is an addictive problem that could become your problem if you're so inclined to be that way. And you got to watch yourself. It's not a harmless vice. And, I tell this to people all the time. Everything that's legal is not always moral. And if you're an addictive type of person, it's morally, wrong for you to get involved in it, because it's going to cause other things. Do you know that in every township, do the work, in every township now where they have legalized gambling, and I think it's 38 states across the country, something like that. Do you know that the crime rate in every category goes up? Every category, because gamblers get desperate. They have to make up their losses. That's why a guy like Chauncey Billups can get in trouble, because if he lost $3, $4, $5, $6 million, he's trying to make it up. He's a celebrity. He has a different way. People approach him. He can bring people to a card game and split the winnings after they, fleece these guys. But other people don't have that advantage. They're going to go out on the street in some way, try to make it up. The crime rate in every category goes up, from petty crimes right up to serious crimes. So how is gambling good? It's not good. And I hate to say it, and, maybe the leagues are going to get mad at me. Michael, you're cutting into our business. But listen, I'll tell you, I had an aunt that worked at the Wynn Hotel. She was she ran the sports book Wynn hired her. She was called the Queen of the Strip because she was that good, right? It was my wife's aunt, her mother's sister. Well, I used to go there, and she used to comp me a little bit at the hotel. And when there was a bill in front of Congress about banning sports in the NCAA, she met me at the door. Now, this is my wife's aunt, who I was very close to. She met me at the door of the hotel, and she said, "Are you speaking in favor of that bill to ban sports on college campuses?" I said, "No, not that I know of." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because if you are, you can't come into the hotel." That's how serious it was. So, and she's a good person, but she ran the sports book. That's her job.
And that's legal, by the way. So it's legal. So she's not out in the street. She's legal. So that's the thing I wanted to ask you. This is the big question for me. And I want to say this very respectful. The life that you live, if you're in that life and you're a member of a family, some people might look down their nose at you for the way that you earn your money. But now all of a sudden, all of these people that had looked down their nose or thought less of you or were so high and mighty are now in the same business that you are, now that we legalize this and we made it legal. So it's not immoral anymore, it's legal. How do you look at them for all these years of looking at wise guys that were running numbers rackets and gambling and all the rest? Now it's legitimate in the United States. How does that make you feel?
Well, it's hypocrisy at the highest level. I mean, look, in our neighborhood, you talk about numbers. Numbers business was big, but we had grandmothers and aunts and everybody. You bet 50 cents on a number, you win $600 back. That's what the thing was back then. So this was through the neighborhood. So yeah, one guy was making money numbers, but he was also paying out to people. They loved it. Well, guys went to jail for that. Okay. Same bookmakers. Not every bookmaker, there's a fallacy out there that bookmakers are torturing people and breaking legs and killing people that owe them money. That's ridiculous. Why are you going to hurt somebody that owes you money? You want to get paid, So it's an extreme circumstance when violence was used to collect money. It was an extreme. I know I had 12 bookmakers working for me. Yeah, sometimes we would threaten somebody, but you don't want to put people in a hospital and do all of that. That's insane. But those same guys were doing 10 years, 15 years for gambling, bookmaking, because it was such a heinous crime. And now look, you know why it was a heinous crime back then? Because we weren't paying taxes on it. That's it. You pay taxes, give the government their end, and then it's okay. Now it's morally good. No problem whatsoever. So yeah, it's hypocrisy, the height of hypocrisy.
And now I go to the NBA games. Now I go to certain stadiums. I can actually place a bet as I'm walking into the stadium.
Unbelievable. Really.
Right? I can buy a lottery ticket, and it's the same thing that you did running numbers back in the day, and now we do it for the kids.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed this conversation tremendously. Like I said, I watch all of your content. I think the fact that you gave you changed your life, and I don't know your motivation for doing this, but as I watch your content, just watching you try to help people, I think is rather remarkable.
Well, I appreciate that. And, I don't claim the cry. I've been very, very fortunate, very blessed. I have a wife that led me in the right direction, surrounded myself with people that led me in the right direction. I have to say this, I met a lot of good people in my former life. And you have that age-old question, well, why do good people do bad things? Well, we had a different ideology. When we took that oath, hey, I got your back, you got mine. We were given certain rules and regulations, and we were told straight out, if you break those rules, you could pay for it with very serious consequences. Pay for it with your life. And there were times when I was on the street that I did things that I wasn't comfortable with. In my heart, it didn't feel good. I did them anyway, no question. I took full responsibility. I did them anyway, but I didn't feel good about it. And I think there was a lot of guys like that. They were good guys, but we took an oath and we felt we were doing the right thing. We justified it. But then you come out of it and you say, wait a second, that wasn't right. I shouldn't have done that. There's no excuse, and you surround yourself with the right people. And, for me, it's a faith issue. I mean, I think God had a different plan and a purpose for my life. I could see that, as clear as day. So, I also feel to those who have been given much, much is expected in return. And look, I'm alive, I'm free, just about all of my associates are either dead or in prison for the rest of their life. So I was certainly given much. And you feel a responsibility at that point to do your part when you're called upon to do it. And that's all it's been for me. I don't deserve any kind of accolades or anything like that. It's just, you have to realize that there's times you have to give back. When you've been given much, you give back. And that's what it's all about.
Oh, by the way, my wife wanted me to ask you about your wine.
My wine?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, franzesewine.com. In your case, where are you located?
We're in Virginia.
Virginia. I think we can send there, but we have a direct to consumer where we can send it all over the country. But our wine is terrific.
Okay.
We're in business now 3 years, and we have something really going on now. As a matter of fact, we're going to do a live broadcast on Saturday. We have these fruit wines. We have
I saw that.
Yeah, strawberry, blackberry, pomegranate, and what else? And cherry, and they're flying off the shelves. Because of the bottles that they're in, they're very unique. They look like the fruit. People are making flower vases after, and they're putting candles in them. But the wine is really good. It's really good. And then we have our Rennie, which is the oldest Pinot Noir. It's the parent of Pinot Noir. We have a great white. We have a great Malbec. And people are really loving it, and we're doing a great job with it. I'm working harder than I ever worked because my partner's got me promoting it all the time. But it's really paying off. So I'd love to give you some to try.
No, that would be awesome. What's funny is how many former athletes are now vintners and in the wine business, and then you're in the wine business as well. So they just can't get away from you. They all want to spend time with you. All right, forgive me. I just have one bonus question.
That's fine.
You have to help me with this fight that Bret and I have. Okay. I saw your review of the 3rd season of Tulsa King the other day. I think you just did that the other day, right?
Yeah, I did a couple episodes. Yeah. The first 3 episodes. Yeah.
Okay. So give me your opinion right here for Bret Boone and the podcast. And Boone and I go back and forth because he got me hooked on Tulsa King first. And now I think it's the world's greatest. He goes, it's good. It's good. I'm like, Bret, I actually turned off NFL games on Sunday as soon as that episode pops. I just love watching Dwight and Manfredi. He reminds me of all the people that I saw in North Beach and San Francisco. And then you put him in Oklahoma, where I don't know if they know anything about cannolis or anything about Italian food, and you watch him as a fish out of water. I'm fascinated with that show. I wanted to get your thoughts.
I think it's great. I think Stallone is doing a terrific job. I enjoy watching him. I think it's one of his best roles, quite honestly. And, the twist, bringing it out of New York or Chicago or any of the main cities and bringing it to Oklahoma, is that reality? I mean, would a guy be able to go over and take over the town like he's done so quickly? Of course not. But we're watching a television show. We're not watching a documentary, a biography. I think it's a great show. I think Stallone's doing a great job. I love the whole concept behind it. And I hope it continues. I mean, this is season 3. I hope he keeps going with it. And it's a good season. He brought in that different character, the bad guy with that owns the winery.
The other one. He's wearing, he was in Sons of Anarchy and a bunch of other shows. He's been great. And I just think it's a great show. So I had to ask you that because Boone's like, hey, Boone, I can't talk to you right now. I'm watching Tulsa King. And he goes, it's okay. I'm like, no, Tulsa King, you got me hooked on it because he watches so many different things all the time. But he's a big Sylvester Stallone fan. So we sit and talk about Tulsa King all the time. So I said, I'm going to ask Michael about Tulsa King and be a fanboy for just a moment and just ask him what he thinks.
Yeah, no, it's great. Tell Bret, it's one of the good ones out there. And by the way, I have to mention this, after 20 years of people approaching me to make a movie on my life, I finally gave in with a writer and a production company that I thought was really doing a good job. I'm going to have the finished script. It's been worked on now for about a year and a half by the first week in November. And then they're going to go out and start casting it. So I'm pretty excited because they did a really good job on it, The guy's from New York. He's got the vibe and everything. He understands. So we'll see what happens. Hey, listen, in this industry, until the cameras roll, you never know. But
all right, then I have to ask, who would you have play you?
They ask me that all the time, and I say, well, how about Denzel Washington? Because I know he'll get the movie made. He's a superstar. Because it all depends on who they cast.
See, you're still a businessman. You're a businessman at heart.
That's it. Let's get the movie made. They're throwing A-list names around. There's so many guys that could do a good job out there. I just want to see it get made. If we're going to do it, I told the guys, listen, if I'm going to sit down with you for 50 hours on this script, make the movie, don't just play with this thing. So I think it'll go the distance this time, and we'll see how they cast it. I have a lot of confidence in the production team. So we'll see.
Hey, I'll be watching for it. Like I said, I subscribe to the channel. I get the notification when it comes on, and I enjoy everything that you put out in your content on YouTube and all the rest of the channels. And I think it's pretty remarkable, especially when you're helping educate people about what's really going on around this NBA story. And I just wanted to thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This is it's been one of my favorite interviews. I mean that. You got into some good points here, and I think we got to educate people. We got to let them know what's really going on, and we'll see how it plays out. But I do believe this, if they continue this, and like I said, if they put a squad on this is the tip of the iceberg. It really is. But
if they want to. If they want to. That's if they want to. That's the big question. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it. And say hello to Bret.
Absolutely. That's going to do it for the Bret Boone Podcast for this time around. Thanks, everybody.